Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Business and Leadership. I am Ryan, and today we are coming straight from the Messenger studio, and I've got an amazing guest with me today, Gwen Smith. This girl has been through a lot. She's accomplished a lot. She's here. She is now. We can give her a really cool title for Adult and Teen Challenge. She's Honcho.
Oh,
She's
gosh.
Honcho right now, Adult and Teen Challenges. So anyways, hey, Gwen. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, let's definitely go. Love that intro music. That was awesome.
That is that's a dear friend by the name of J.R. Berries, who is he fills in for, he's on tour right now with Pillar. He fills in for Korn when
Okay.
Brian Welch, who gave his life to the Lord like 10 years ago. So when Brian's out, J.R. steps in. J.R. and I actually met 15 years ago when he was like 12.
Oh my goodness.
He's an 11, 12-year-old kid that walks in. We're youth pastoring in Arizona, and he comes in and just says, hey, I was at a church, and the church actually picked up and relocated, and it was too far for him to attend anymore, right? So he comes in and goes, hey, I play guitar. I have never had any lessons. I feel like I'm picking up on it. Can I come to church here? And of course, that's like every youth pastor's dream.
Absolutely.
Is like a kid walking through and saying like, can I come to church here with you? And so I was 21 or 22 at the time. And we ended up just like, it wasn't a friendship, obviously, because he was like
Right.
11 and I was maybe like married 30 days. But we have stayed in contact for all these years. And then when he became an adult, we started talking just a little bit more on a friendship level, and now he's like 26, 27, 28. And so, so we travel anywhere to see him. Anyways, that's his band Spoken. He's
I love
actually,
that.
he's in Spoken. So, hey, it's wonderful having you on the show today.
Thanks. I knew we were going to meet last week, but
Yes.
this was a surprise. So, but I love surprises. I love surprises.
Surprises are awesome.
Yeah.
I would probably say that any piece of counsel I would give to somebody going into full-time ministry, or I guess trying to take on management in the real world,
Yeah.
is embrace surprises.
Yeah.
And they can be good.
Yeah.
They can be good. And anytime they might be a legit surprise, it's an opportunity. It's a chance to stretch. And I've recently just reminded myself that anytime that I ask to bear more godly fruit, like patience and stuff, the Lord's going to give me challenges to in fact endure that and to receive that. So I wish I could wake up and he's just like, oh, hey, here's more patience for you. I just gave that to you today. You're just going to be stronger.
Yeah.
But no, he's like, hey, here is a fantastic brand new problem that you have no idea to handle. But and one of the reasons why we did the podcast is to bring on people that just don't have good advice, but have experience and counsel, and that's one of the most important things is that myself personally, I go out and I look for people that are just so much more advanced in every sense of the way. Like just over the weekend, I had a really dear friend who he's turning 60, another 20 years of preaching, more than I have ever imagined before. And it is just awesome asking him questions that
Yes.
I'm dealing with. And he's just like, oh, no, this is the answer.
Yeah.
And I'll say something like, well, I'm praying through. He's like, you can pray through all you want. This is what the Bible says. This is where the Holy Spirit always leads these leaders to the same thing. And I think, what was really interesting, not to get too off topic, this was one of the first times, I don't know about you, whenever you're investing in people, right? And I'll just kind of kick this off with all your experience. And I want to hear about your experience and all that you've done and where you've been. But when you're digging into somebody who you see potential in and you're trying to get them to the next level, and then there's no spirit of excellence with them. There's no spirit of excellence with them. They don't see attention to detail. There's a lot of things. I just feel like the older that I get, the more I realize like some people can learn things and some people are simply just not cut out for whatever that situation. Do you find any truth with that? Like when like this, you've done as much as you can. Actually, that's an awesome question considering what you're doing today.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, before we dig into that, let's circle back. Talk to me about Macy's. Talk to me about your 11, you've got decades of experience.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about your past, the budget that you were given, and then let's get into Adult and Teen Challenge where it's CEO, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
You're
Yeah.
CEO.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into how far can you go with somebody on the on-ramp
Yep.
in the wrong direction before you have to say,
This is not it.
I don't know if I can follow you much longer because you had to
Yeah.
We're not making our benchmarks. Okay. Talk to me
Yeah.
about your past a little bit.
Sure. I want to start with this because I think it's key, because God takes all things that we go through and do and uses it for his glory and his
Right.
good, and you learn a lot. So I tell everybody I'm very honored and blessed to, and I know this is going to sound silly, but I'm so thankful for the opportunity. I started at Shoney's when I was 17 years old,
That's
and I
awesome.
was a breakfast bar girl.
Let's go.
Okay. I had the wraparound polyester skirt.
Yes.
And I had a hairnet on my hair.
I remember Shoney's.
Yeah.
I love Shoney's. It was buffet, right?
Yeah, and it was right off the expressway. And it was
Always.
new, and it was packed all the time when I first started there.
What was the mask? Is it a chipmunk?
The bear, the Shoney bear.
The Shoney bear.
Yeah, the Shoney bear. But I started there as a breakfast bar girl, and I got there. I was the morning girl, and you're carrying all those pans of food out. And I started noticing that people were picking cash money up off tables.
Oh,
Waiting tables.
Tips that have been left.
Yes.
But it's not a Shoney worker. It's like legit people that are eating there.
And they leave a tip.
Yes. And then other people are coming by.
And the waitresses would go and fill they would pick it up. And
okay.
so me as a breakfast bar girl, I wasn't getting that.
I see.
And so I seen this. I was like, wait a minute.
Okay.
I'm making an hourly rate here.
Right. Okay.
And it's a fixed hourly rate.
Right.
So if I'm waiting tables, I can kind of control that somehow, some way. By the
Your
amount
brain
of
started ticking.
So I left the breakfast bar girl role, and I started waiting tables. And I say all that to say this, that being a servant for so many years and waiting on people and assuming responsibility for everything. I don't care if the cook messed up the food. I'm the front person.
You are.
I'm taking responsibility for it. But it taught me so lot. It taught me a lot. Humility, accept responsibility, be a people to all people, to connect with everybody, different personalities.
Yes.
And I absolutely loved that. It was the hardest work. But I loved being able to connect with so many people from so many different places. And I can look back on that today and still see how God is using that in what I'm doing today. I don't meet a stranger.
Right.
And I think that comes from that.
Absolutely.
I'm going to assume responsibility because I'm the front person, so I'm going to assume that.
Yeah.
I'm going to treat people good. Not that I want them to leave me a tip on the table, but
it helps.
It helped then.
If it does.
Yeah.
I've always said that if you can be in food business or coffee, you can work anywhere.
Anywhere.
Because, and I'm sure you can either attest or maybe you have a different perspective. Just with like the Dunkin' business that we do.
Oh, that's right.
Right. The Dunkin' business that we do. People like their coffee a certain way, and in their defense, though, if you're gonna pay like 4 to 5
or
and a half,
6 or 7,
right, that's on the Starbucks. There.
Okay, I gotcha.
No,
that's not
kidding.
the Dunkin' Donut. Gotcha.
Nevertheless, though, like if you're paying $5, $6, $7, $8, and let's just say like you're at the Starbucks, that drink better be like next level. You've never experienced that quality in your mouth before.
Absolutely.
And so they do deserve that.
Yes.
The investment is that they are believing. But by the same token, though, I have walked into some of the most challenging conversations through serving coffee. And you know what the thing is? The answer is always absolutely. Like just this morning, I drove by one of my Dunkins, and she ordered a medium iced coffee. And we said, do you want some sugar and cream in that? She's like, absolutely. And I said, now, before you do this, would you like any flavor? Do you like any flavor? Because most people don't know what they want.
Right.
And I think that's also true in the business, the nonprofit, and secular, non-secular world, church, definitely church. We're, in the church world, we're shepherding people. Yeah. Because they don't know what they want, but they want truth. Yeah. And in the business world, they don't really know people don't know what they want. That's why every 4 years when we have this election, there's these people saying, this is what I'll do for you, this is what I'll do for you. But at the end of the day, I think we're all kind of sitting back and saying, America doesn't know what it wants. Yeah. And so I said, is there a flavor that you would like, right? You almost kind of size people up sometimes. And I just knew that this amazing lady, she didn't know what she wanted. And sure enough, she gets her drink, she takes a sip, she's like, oh, I don't think so. And I was like, what would you like to it? It needs to be sweeter. It does, because I'm thinking, you're not an iced coffee kind of girl. Yeah. I can just tell that. And sure enough, she's like, let's do some vanilla, And so it's funny that you're talking about the food business, because like
we can relate on that.
We can relate on that. So you got inspired by Shoney's, or you saw potential in yourself, you saw the
I did.
opportunity, and then you decided to take that and go where with it?
Well, I worked all the way up to dining room manager. And then I got to a point, so I always started out at the bottom and worked my way up.
Absolutely.
And you learn a lot in that. I wouldn't trade any of it. But one day, it was maybe the last couple months I was there, I was looking around. There's nothing wrong with waiting tables at 60 years old. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I one day, and this was after I started going back to church, I met the pastor of the church.
Okay.
I waited on him and his board.
Oh,
and
I love this. Okay.
I had been praying because I rededicated my life.
Yeah.
When my youngest son was like a year old through a drama that
Yeah.
I seen at church. And I'd started praying.
Okay.
Lord, I want to go to a church. I don't know where to start. And my
Right.
cousin had recommended this same church. And one day, a gentleman was in, and they were having coffee. They were having their weekly board meeting there,
Yeah.
and it was a pastor. It was Pastor Sadler who had pastored Good Shepherd Worship Center.
Okay.
And I was their waitress.
Yeah.
And he invited me to church,
That's amazing.
and I'm still there today.
That's awesome.
Mikey is
Very cool.
27, so 25 years
Insane.
I've been there.
Vicky Lake or Vicky Lake, my wife.
So I worked. It was 2 months before I left. I looked around one day, and you know how sometimes you just come to a realization, I got to change something. I didn't want, and again, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong
course.
with waiting tables at 60. Matter of fact, sometimes I'm tempted to go back for a couple evenings a week just to make
Absolutely.
extra money, right?
But you were inspired, though. Like, you saw that there is potential
Yes.
within yourself
Yes.
to
I
go
can
a
do more
direction,
than-
and you wanted,
Yep.
where can this take me?
So I asked my husband, I said, I'd like to go back to school, college, and I'd like to leave waitressing. I just feel like if I don't leave, I'm going to be so comfortable, and I'm going to rely on this the rest of my
Right,
life. And he
right.
supported that.
Married now for how long?
Okay, we just celebrated our 31-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so,
That's awesome.
Been together 33 years, so I'm
Yeah.
a mom of 3 and
Okay.
a nanny to 5.
Hi.
Yeah.
My boys call my mother-in-law Nana. So
I'm nanny.
You got nanny? Okay.
Yep.
So we got a Nana, and then we have a Beta.
Oh, I love that.
Beta. It was by mistake. My oldest couldn't say what she wanted to be called, and a B got in there. And so it just ended up being Beta.
Beta.
And now, and that's my mom, and now that sticks. And so, which
I
is
love
really weird
that.
because now, like, I'll call my mom Beta whenever she's around. So
There's something about when your grandkids call you nanny. It's
That's so
my favorite
good.
thing. It's my favorite name. It's my
Okay.
favorite title in the whole wide world.
I love that.
Favorite title.
So you started making changes in your
Yep.
life. You were finding the Lord. You were
Yep.
finding changes. And then how does a person go from Shoney's, was it to...
Then the bookkeeper for Emerald Norman, Carol Warren, who still goes to church at Good Shepherd, she was a bookkeeper for Emerald Norman Cosmetic Studio.
Nice.
And the owner was looking for someone she could trust part-time for evenings.
Wow.
And I became that person. And I started part-time doing 2 nights a week. And then after 2 years, I was running the Emerald Norman for 5 years. So she
Wow.
became a funeral home district manager where she would have to be on the road a lot.
Right.
So I took on all the responsibilities of that studio.
You know, a bookkeeper speaks a lot to your character and your integrity because, I mean, if that goes wrong,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what you're pushing or selling.
Well, it was the bookkeeper who referred me.
That's even more.
Yeah, yeah.
That's incredible. Okay, so you were there, and then talk to me about your next step.
Then, well, first I want to share the first learn. When you go through mentors in your life at different seasons and different reasons.
Right.
I had never sold cosmetic. I could sell something off a menu. I think when you can sell one thing, I think you can sell anything.
Absolutely.
And my first sales lesson there was a lady had come in and she observed and gave feedback. Okay, and I think we miss that a lot in what we do today. We observe things, but we don't stop, pause, and give feedback to somebody that we're invested in.
Incredibly important.
So the first feedback lesson that I can remember from that, the lady come in for lipstick. I sold her lipstick. I showed her lipstick, lip liner, lip gloss, but I sold her lipstick.
Right.
And when she walked out, her name was Deborah, the owner. She said, "Hey, tell me about that last transaction with that customer." I said, "Oh, I found her the right color." And she goes, "I noticed you only sold the lipstick." And I said, "Well, that's what she asked for." And she goes,
Right.
"Well, I want you to think about
Right.
how many times have you gone and bought something, but you would have gotten something else if someone had recommended."
It's good. It's
And
good.
I've never forgot that. She said, "Always think about the before the product and what comes after the product."
I love that.
And she always took time to invest in me in that way. Now, the least likely thing that I liked doing about that job, because there's always something and something that we're doing
Right.
that we would just opt out.
You would wish, that you didn't have to do it.
Ear piercing. Ear piercing.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Because that tool would get jammed up.
Would
you
it
got
really?
On the earlobe of a 3-year-old little girl
Oh,
who's
my.
already screaming and crying.
Oh, my.
And it's like it.
How do you
was,
get it out?
You just got to finesse it, and you got to act like everything's okay. And on the inside,
You're
coming unglued, but
It's
no
like
one
the-
on the outside's going to see it because you got this tool stuck to this little girl's ear.
It's like the duck on the water where like the feet are
Yes.
going, so I'm sure that was just dreadful when someone was just like, "Oh, hey, my little girl wants to get her ears pierced today." And you're just like, "Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll meet you over there in the corner of that chair, and I'm going to get this gun that I'm not really sure if it's going to work or not."
Yeah.
Oh,
Good
my
times.
goodness.
That was the least likely that I did not enjoy. But we do things in our roles of leadership that sometimes we don't enjoy.
Yes.
And we just got to press through and give it our best.
Absolutely.
Then from there, I was always looking for ways, and sometimes this was wrong. I could get out of sorts because I'd always look for ways to bring more income into my family.
Yeah.
Because my mom and dad struggled my entire childhood. Our house we went bankrupt a couple times. We had to live with my grandparents. And so when my children were young, we struggled. So I was always looking for ways to improve, to better. Sometimes I think I took too much control on it. But when you are just giving your life to the Lord and you're learning how to rely on Him, those things don't happen overnight.
Right.
And God is patient with us.
Very patient.
And so from there, I'd heard that, Macy's will provide a greater opportunity when it comes to pay. And so I originally was going to run that during the day and work there in the evening time. And I went in, I interviewed for it, and they called me back. Instead of a part-time person, they offered me a counter manager position.
Wow. Okay.
And I took it.
That's
and
incredible.
That was a beginning of a great journey of learning a lot. And I would like to say, looking back into that, God placed people in my life that believed in me and invested in me and challenged me, and I would never trade that opportunity
Right.
for nothing. I learned a lot.
I'm hearing that you have been invested in a lot, and
Yes.
maybe as this conversation goes on, that's where some of this passion of turning around and investing
Yes.
in all of these girls. I mean, for the entire state of Kentucky, for adult and teen challenge, you get to a place where, correct me if I'm wrong, your budget is $11 million for some of the departments that you were overseeing.
That was the sales that could have been driven out
Incredible.
of those departments. So when you're thinking about, in Macy's and one of my leadership roles was a beauty district merchant, and you're looking at, if you walk into these department stores just within the cosmetics, that can represent anywhere from $2 million to $11 million of sales.
That's a lot.
That just in lipstick and skincare.
That I'm sure most people do not know that fact or the potential.
It's beauty is a big business. When I look back, even at working with Estee Lauder and Macy's together, because as an account coordinator, you worked on behalf of both. And I took everything that I did, and I wanted to serve the Lord doing it.
Right.
Because sometimes we think, and I even struggled with it in my young years, oh, well, unless I'm serving in ministry full time, I can't serve the Lord.
Right.
And God can take what you're doing, and we just talked about this at the AG Leadership on Tuesday. God can take what you're doing
Oh, absolutely.
and use it for His glory.
Of course.
So many times women would when I worked at Estee Lauder, women would sit in a chair, I'm standing, because you're taking off all their makeup and you're going to redo it. And I absolutely love that too. But I remember one time, Pastor Ryan, a woman had come in, and she was in, let's just say she wasn't in a great profession.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she wanted to get new makeup. And her makeup was so dark and the shade of her foundation was so much dark. It was like a mask.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I remember it was one of the most impactful things. She trusted me enough to take off her makeup in front of me.
That's a big deal.
Because not every woman's going to let you see them without their makeup. Because we look totally different sometimes with or without makeup. Yeah. And I will never forget, because I could sit there. She trusted me. She was vulnerable. And she let me in that moment. And I wasn't considered a minister at that time by no means. But I just offered her acceptance and hope. And everything that we do, God can use it to impact somebody's life.
Absolutely. Wow, that's incredible. So you have a platform. You're using it for the Lord. You've been back in church for a little bit. You're seeing yourself develop. Your character's developed. Jesus is developing you. How does that bring... How does a person get called out of a platform like that into ministry, nonprofit, where instead of receiving a weekly paycheck that you know is coming because you have potential $11 million worth of sales that can come in and flip a salary, no problem, to full-time ministry where we're probably working and depending on the Lord more than ever, my family to be fed, the house to be paid, and then you have, you're overseeing several sites now, right? A couple of sites. We got one here in Brandenburg, which is crazy because I'll never forget the day that, I went to, I think a district council 5-6 years ago. And what kind of spurred on the Brandenburg Adult and Teen Challenge site was we had just came from Chicago, and we were trying a bunch of Chicago church methods to see kind of like what was going to work and what wasn't. Most of it not working. When you go from 11 million people to about 2,900 people overnight, it's a big jump. And so we're there. We're kind of like working through it. We're cutting our teeth. And I just remember looking out over the congregation and seeing that majority of our congregation is our seniors, but our kids ministry is blowing up. Mm-hmm. How does that happen? How do you have how does your kids ministry grow when majority of it? And then I just said, how many of you are struggling to connect with your children, not your grandchildren, your your children, to have a relationship with them to know Jesus, them to come to church? And I said, in return, you're raising your grandbabies, and that's how they got here to church. And I kid you not, like 85-90% of the entire congregation, which wasn't large at the time. We maybe had like 40 people, 40 people 8 years ago, and which is awesome because just recently, it doesn't matter what we're running now. It's just organically things have been growing, right?
Yes.
And I was just like, oh, that's the calling. That's where we have to. That's what that's at least what this local church is going to put its first fruits and its efforts into, is to bringing rehabilitation. And then we got down to basics and we said, you know what? We love men. Men are awesome. Dad are awesome. But we were finding that there was a disconnect between women and their children. And if we can't get mom to get back in the picture, the greater return was going to be mom to come, and you hate to, because we'd love to bring a men's program too. But that's, so I just remember walking over to Julie, who was a previous former
Vicky
CEO.
Lake or Vicky
And
Lake.
hey, Vicky Lakes keep calling.
I know, I hear that.
And I just said, hey, what would it take for Women's Drug Rehabilitation Center to come to Brandenburg? And you know what the funny thing was about Julie is she was so kind.
Yes.
She gave me that look as in like, I get this about 10 times a week, and I'm going to act like that I've never heard it. I'm going to be sweet to you. I'm going to be kind to you. And she said two things, which is totally true in the nonprofit world. She said money and land.
Yep.
And so I went back to the board and I was just like, I don't know how we'll do this because like our buildings were falling apart at the time. Like Journey Church in itself is like a miracle that I could probably testify about for the rest of my life, right? Let alone trying to get this thing. But bottom line, it's here.
Yes.
Brandenburg Adult and Teen Challenge is here. And I remember meeting with your board and showing them places that this could possibly be. And they were just like, hey, we need some money. And I'm like, let us at least pledge this amount. And then the Lord doubled that amount over a couple of years, all to say, I couldn't be more thankful that it's here and that it's open, right? And you got girls there right now. So you're overseeing a couple sites. Talk to us a little bit about like your role as CEO and like the Brandenburg site that's here in Meade County.
Yes. So March 29th, I transitioned into the CEO role, and I will be with Adult and Teen Challenge now. Pastor Ryan will be 3 years in September.
Time has flown.
Yes, it has.
Wow.
I came as the program manager.
Yes, I remember that.
And then I, a year later, became executive director. And then in working with a great mentor as well in the nonprofit, Julie Duvall, she is, and
Yes.
we have a weekly standing conversation because I still need her
Yeah.
and I still appreciate her. I tell her all the time, I appreciate her friendship, her leadership, and her
Right.
support still
Absolutely.
in this role.
She's a go-getter.
She is.
She is.
And she is so kind, but she's very, here's what I recommend. She doesn't push it, but she's
Yeah.
going to give her
It's good
guidance.
leadership. It's good leadership.
It's very good leadership. So I have been, let's say April, May, June, July, we're going to say about 5 months.
Okay.
So in the past 5 months,
Yeah.
and I just recapped this to Steve Green with Way FM.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, in the short amount of time, God has come through and has just extended his goodness and favor. We have been able to update our website.
Amen.
Praise God.
It's a big deal. That's
Have
a
you
big
seen
deal.
it? Have you
I
been
have.
on it?
It's
Okay.
clean.
Yes.
It's nice.
I wanted modern, clean, easy to do, and the message of hope.
Yeah.
And God brought a divine connection to the table through a ministry partner with Hope Rescued and Alex.
Yes.
And he connected me with Jeff Dinges, who worked with me on this website.
It's awesome.
We have been able to complete the paint project for Priscilla's Place. That happened in June.
Which is your location out in Louisville. Okay.
Yes.
How many girls do you have
Right
there?
there are 6. And then we have been in that community now for 21 years.
That's incredible. I've seen the
21
house from the outside. I haven't been
You'll
in.
have to come and do a
I need to
tour.
come by and say hi.
Just come and check it out.
I will.
Brandenburg is so wide open and spacious and has this country feel.
It does.
Where Priscilla's Place is this Victorian turn of the century
Yes.
homes. I call it stacked and packed.
It is beautiful.
But they are beautiful. The work is still intact of it. And then in the midst of that, April 16th, we opened up Brandenburg Outreach.
Right.
And April has been with us now. I hired her in August of last year. So August 4th was her 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And we had said for the 3 months before we opened, because any leader out there is going to relate with frustration
Right.
and discouragement.
Sure.
Because we're all lying if we say we don't ever face it, right?
Absolutely.
And we would get 2 steps ahead, and then the bottom would come out again of opening.
Mm-hmm.
And then one morning I called her and I said, look, this is what I really believe that the Lord is what the Lord is speaking. I, the Lord myself, will make it happen. Because we were like striving and thinking
Right.
and bringing it. But you do have to do, there has to be works, because faith
Right.
without works is dead.
Absolutely.
But what I was doing, it was not bringing it about, okay?
Sure. Yep.
So I got up one morning and that scripture just hit me and I was like, okay,
It was just
I'm going to trust in the Lord. I'm going to rely. I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to quit trying to make things happen here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, shortly after that,
I believe that.
And then now we have, like, when I walk that, because I just came here from the campus today, 3 live-in residential staff members full
which
time.
is incredible.
Praise God.
That's incredible.
His goodness is so amazing.
He's been faithful.
He
to the
has.
process, and I know that timing is everything,
Timing is everything.
and the right people
Is everything.
is everything. And and one of the questions I wanted to ask you today was, how does that translate? Is your leadership any different? The way that you, and there's a difference between a leader and a manager. Can you find both in one? Sure, but I think as a person develops, they end up having to pursue one over the other to be excellent
Yes.
at it. Your managing skills, your leadership skills, what's the difference between being at Macy's and being with Adult and Teen Challenge? How do you handle people differently?
I don't think I handle the people differently. I think the topics are different.
Sure.
Because with being a leader at Macy's, so when you talk about leadership, there's different levels. So leading self is the number one requirement. You can't lead others until you can lead yourself.
That's true.
So leading self, then leading others. Then you begin to lead leaders who are leading others. And so to lead now at 3 campuses, I don't believe it's the only thing different that I would say. It's the topics of it, and I am not selling to anybody.
Right.
I am serving, but I think serving's been
Yes.
both.
Servanthood leadership is
It's everything. I'm not a title person.
right. No. Yeah.
I tell everybody, just like today when I met one of the new residents at Brandenburg, I said, first, let me introduce myself as a wife,
Yeah.
as a mom, as a nanny. I showed her pictures of my
Right.
grandkids. I said, because I don't want anyone ever to feel like, oh my gosh, the CEO is. No, I am serving the Lord
Right.
side by side with you, and I want you to feel comfortable around me. I want to
Absolutely.
be approachable to you. The big difference now that I can say, yes, I'm leading people, but I am discipling people.
Mm-hmm.
And that I have always loved the disciple. When I look back in my previous positions, was I discipling? In ways, absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. But now, like the word of God is out every
Right.
day. There is prayer happening
It's
throughout
amazing.
the day. And you are discipling. In my what we call secular world,
Mm-hmm.
God always blessed me with forums to share about him. Like I never had to hide that under a bushel.
Right.
Matter of fact, a lot of times I would be walking through the store and someone would motion me to come over
Sure.
and say, hey, would you pray for me?
Isn't that amazing?
So I never had to hide the leaders that were over me, that were my direct reports.
Yeah.
They never asked me to hide my light.
That's awesome.
And
I think that's the hand of the Lord on you
Yes.
to give you that opportunity to, and and I would probably go on. I probably support the idea that the Lord, as He gave you that platform, and you're doing that with character, and you're not ashamed, and you're not afraid, is almost why maybe you continue to be blessed with additional opportunities to go higher and to go higher and higher, because the Lord's just like, hey, listen, you continue to build and honor me, then I can continue to raise. So
I would say one more thing too. I was sharing with the ladies not too long ago. I said, when you're in a corporate or secular world, a lot of times when you're on the road and you're traveling, because we had multiple states and there'd be multiple stores and you'd
Right.
be all day long. And then when you got back to your hotel room, sometimes the first place you went up, dropped your stuff, then you met down at the bar
Yeah,
area.
yeah,
Okay.
sure.
And so from the very beginning, I knew, and I thank God, I look back on it today, right at that time when I started traveling, I was also a youth pastor. And I would sit there every night on the road with all my peers whom I loved, and I had so much respect for them. And I would be the only one not drinking. Matter of fact, I'd be drinking tea and coffee. I'd be so caffeinated, and I still don't know how I went to bed that night. And it would always arise.
Right.
You don't drink?
yeah,
And I'm like, no. I said, hey, there's no judgment on anybody here
Right.
at this table. I make the choice. I'm a youth pastor.
Right.
And if I'm telling them, hey,
Not to.
yeah, I'm surely not going to
then
do
I'm
it.
not going to do it either.
Because
Yeah.
I think about what if, one day I'm sitting somewhere and I'm like, I'm not doing what I'm asking, what I'm
Right.
sharing. And that would be a huge stumbling block for them. So I always stood
absolutely.
on that platform. Now looking back at that, I am so thankful how God did things at these timings, because when you're stressed, people do things to unwind.
Oh yeah.
Especially in the world I'm in now, in the
Right.
world of recovery. A lot of times people get into an addiction behavior due to it's a way to unwind
Right.
and de-stress.
Yeah.
And I knew right off the bat that was a boundary that was not ever to be crossed for me.
I love that. What does the future hold for Adult and Teen Challenge?
I think I believe the future holds a lot for Adult and Teen Challenge. When you look across the board, there are about 220 campuses across the United States. That's just within the United States.
Wow.
So Adult and Teen Challenges are across the world.
Yeah.
Gary Blackard is our leader of Adult and Teen Challenge, and I just went to my first national conference,
Yeah,
myself
okay.
in April, and to come together for 4 days with like-minded people. We started every morning with praise and worship. We ended it.
Amazing.
You had breakout sessions. You were able to talk. What about this? What about that? And just the vision.
Yeah.
Do I think addiction's going to go anywhere?
Right.
Probably not.
Yeah.
From a worldwide
Sure.
perspective.
Absolutely.
So the need is always going to be there, and it not necessarily addiction, but any life controlling
Right.
issue.
Right.
So there's always going to be a need for that, and so I
Okay.
believe that the Lord established this ministry, and He will
Absolutely.
continue it. I tell everybody, it's not my ministry.
Right.
It's His ministry. I get to serve in it, and
Yeah.
I'm super excited about it. But for Adult and Teen Challenge of Kentucky, right now, my heart is, because I'm very strategic as I plan.
Yeah.
And I tell everybody on my team, look, we focus on 3 or 4 things at a time. You got 20 things on your list, guess what? You're not going to do anything with excellence. Right now, the goal is to get Brandenburg filled.
Just established,
It's got to get established, a firm foundation underneath it, because what comes out of Brandenburg now will overfill into Priscilla's place.
Yes.
And
yes.
so anything that is newly open takes a lot of attention and time and
Sure.
investment to make sure that it is set for future years.
It's
for
a great
10 years.
pipeline. It's a great pipeline.
It's a great
for-
pipeline.
All right, let me circle back to this one question before we kind of conclude for today. So one thing I've noticed about you and all the things that you're sharing is that you have been the same person in Jesus regardless of where you've been.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the pursuit of our calling. Like that's what Jesus calls us, is to have an intimate relationship with him and then to share that with other people. And I can clearly see that that's why maybe the Lord has taken you to all these places so that you can be where you are now with that kind of leadership. And I love that about your character. First of all, yes or no? Well, no,
He's going to give me a yes or no question.
When you find yourself in situations where you have invested, just kind of like what we were talking about at the very beginning, when do you know that the line has now been drawn? And because as for two people that are in full-time ministry, like it is heartbreaking when I'm just like, it's one thing for me to say, I don't have the resources or the leadership to lead you anymore. And then I'll outsource it. I'll be like, hey, this person has a much higher degree in counseling, but that's not what I'm getting at. I'm getting at the places where you've been on the on ramp or the off ramp with them for so long, and we're about ready to come into head-on collision traffic.
Yep.
And you've gone as far as you can with the person before you yourself are going to get in an accident.
Yeah.
How do you tackle that?
And I can just use specific examples. It's hard. I guess I'm going to sum it up this way. And I'm going to say, I want to make sure I have the clear scope of your question. Are you talking about someone that you're working with as far as in a profession or in a ministry,
Sure.
not someone you're counseling?
No.
Okay.
No.
I am someone who believes I can't want something more than somebody else does.
Right.
And leaders have to make tough decisions.
Yes, they do.
And it's hard. But when it comes to a point that, okay, you're not on this bus, the
Right.
book Energy Bus, you have decided to not stay on the bus, you're
Right.
not, and that's okay. I'm still going to be your friend.
Yeah.
I'm still going to care about what happens to you.
Right.
We're just not going to be on this same team.
Right.
And sometimes you just got to be able to do it. And sometimes it causes hard feelings.
Right.
2 years ago, someone was no longer on the team, and it was a tough decision. And even looking back in my other careers, it's a tough decision. But if you do it in love, hey, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be here for you.
Right.
We're just not going to be this part of the team. And here's the other thing that's very crucial and important. And I just had this conversation here recently. I'm getting ready to do a review.
Yes.
Oh, I was like, hey, if there was if any time it's going to be specific feedback that needs correction, you're going to hear that all through the year. I'm not going to wait till your year-end
Right.
review
Yeah.
and then hit you with some stuff.
Because it's not fair for them.
That's not fair for
Not
them.
fair.
So I think if someone's on your team and you have been honest and you've been giving them feedback through this whole transition, and I'm always a leader that's going to say, hey, here's what's going to happen next. So I've had to, okay, I've given you a verbal warning. I've given you a written. I want you to be very clear on what our next step is. I
Right.
never had the next step.
Right.
I don't want us to get to, but
Good
you're
leadership.
going to make that choice.
Good.
And then if we get there, like one young lady is not on my team right now, but I'm cheering her on for the accomplishments that
Absolutely.
she's doing in a new role.
Yes. Yes.
She's just not on this team, but she's
Right.
on a different team doing something that
Right.
I believe that God has put in her heart that she's passionate to do,
Which
and
is
that's
huge.
okay.
Which is huge. You're right. It's one thing to be on the right bus. It's another thing to be in the right seat.
Yeah.
And I know that there's been conversations in the past where I will say one or three things. The answer is yes, or the answer is no, or not right, or not with me.
Yep.
So anyways, listen, Gwen.
Yeah.
Amazing having you on today. Thank you for taking
Thank
the
you.
time to talk about your, where you've been, where you're going. You have such a heart for servanthood leadership. There's no better person to be in the seat driving. I know that the Lord is driving. Don't get me wrong.
I understand.
But he uses people, and he's using you. So anyways, hey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you,
we are
everyone.
excited about what's going on as we got upcoming things going on. Stay in the loop. Messenger Studios, as always, right here. We'll see you
Bye.
next week. Bye.